And I'm a naturopathic doctor, which is a specialized doctor of natural medicine. So some of you may not have ever heard of naturopathic medicine, or really haven't heard much of it. And that's because naturopathic doctors, even though we go to four-year medical schools, we receive training very similar to medical doctors, along with extensive training in different natural therapies. Even though we do all that 4 years of medical training along with 4 years of undergraduate prior to that, we're still only licensed in 17 states. Actually, Massachusetts is in the process. They should be licensed within the next couple of weeks. They just have to have their governor sign the bill. But in those states, we're primary care doctors. We have all the rights and privileges of a regular medical doctor. But in states like Ohio, we're not recognized yet, and so that leads to some challenges for our profession. Mostly in the insurance reimbursement end, because if we're not licensed in the state, the insurance companies aren't going to pay for us. But it also just means that I can't work as a primary care doctor for patients. I'm working for my patients as a specialist in natural medicine. So it means you keep your regular primary care medical doctor, but then you can come to see me for natural health care options, either instead of, before you want to try, if you want to look at doing things naturally before you start on a medication, or maybe you're having side effects from some of the medications and you want to try some different options, or maybe just, the medications you are on, depending on your health issues, are very needed, but they're not helping you as much as you need them to help you, and so we can do some things naturally in conjunction with those medications also. And so, as far as naturopathic medicine goes, especially in my practice, I tend to work a lot with diet, which is why we do seminars like this about this blood type diet. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But along with the diet, I also work extensively with patients with different types of nutritional supplements, vitamins, herbs, also minerals, different other supplements that we can help the body to heal, along with making the diet changes. And so I've been in practice for going on 13 years now. I know I had a couple people earlier today tell me I looked like I was 20. That's great to hear, since I just turned 40 a couple weeks ago. So I've been here in practice for just under 13 years, and so I have a lot of patients that I work real well with. And if anybody here hasn't been a patient yet and is interested in what I might be able to do to help you, I do offer free 15-minute phone consultations where we can talk about your health issues and talk about what I could do to help you, to see if this might be a good fit for you. So with that, we're going to start talking about this blood type diet. And so this seminar is actually the second part of the series, this blood type diet series. Although since we have quite a few new faces that didn't make it last month, we'll try to cover a lot of the basics too of the diet. So I guess I'm going to start with my personal experience with this diet. I was actually exposed to this blood type diet about 15 years ago. At the time, I was halfway through medical school, and I was feeling a bit run down. Of course, it's medical school, so that should be expected, although I'm feeling a lot more run down than I should have. And so I went to my school's medical clinic, and one of the doctors recommended me to do this blood type diet. Now, they also recommended me to do some other things that would have helped get me healthier quicker too. But my first impression with this diet is that I thought it sounded sort of silly. I didn't really understand it. I didn't understand what the science behind it or anything, but I respected this doctor. I decided I'm going to give this a try, give it a good try and see what happens. So I didn't do any of the other recommendations they recommended. I just wanted to see if this diet really does work. And so over the next couple of months after I started working on the diet, I noticed some good health benefits. My energy started picking up. I think I probably at that point, even though I didn't change my calorie intake, just made substitutions to different foods, I think I lost about 10 pounds or something without even trying those couple of months. And so I thought things were, this was okay. I still wasn't crazy about, I was 25 at the time, really wasn't crazy about restricting my diet so much. But then my wife had a company picnic. And so I decided that, I've been so good on my diet that I'm just going to go and enjoy myself, and figured, what could happen? And so, the main food that they had at this, picnic was subs from Subway. And so I'm actually a blood type B, and we'll talk about, some of the basics for the diet for the different blood types. But for type Bs specifically, some of the main trigger foods that type Bs have trouble with are wheat, corn, and chicken. So, we get to the, so I'm at this picnic, and I'm trying to do the best I can to pick the best options. And so I got a sub from, one of these subs on a whole wheat bun, and it was a turkey sub. And so I had, ate it, and within about 15 minutes, I got so exhausted, I could hardly keep my eyes open. I actually felt like I was drugged. And that was my first, thing where I'm like, okay, wait a second, there's something here. Although, being that I really didn't want to work on staying away from all those other foods that I really liked, I decided I just had a wheat allergy. I can just, stay away from the wheat and everything will be fine, and I can go along my way. Well, that helped to a degree, and when I, still wasn't getting all the benefits that I really needed, I started looking at some of the other foods that I needed to stay away from as far as my blood type. And, like I said, corn was another one. And so I found that after I avoided corn for about a month or so and tried to add it back in, I didn't necessarily have that immediate drain in my energy like I did with wheat. But what I did notice is that over the next day or so, every time I would have corn, I'd just be a lot more sluggish throughout the day. I didn't have the stamina that I would normally have, and so I just could notice a difference that way. And so then I started playing with a lot of the other foods that I was supposed to stay away from with this diet. Sort of, for me, figured out which foods really caused a lot of problems. Other foods, maybe they didn't bother me quite so much, but sort of, felt that out. And that's really where I started getting confidence in there's something behind this. So, I started doing a lot more research on the diet, and, which has sort of evolved over the years, and, noticed that once I started my practice, started working out with patients, and, moving from medical school in Arizona where, I'm in a very healthy, progressive environment, with health conscious people, and moving back here to Northeast Ohio, it was a big change. And although I was really amazed as to how many people were really open to making those diet changes, because they were, they're desperate to get better. And that just even then further helped me understand how important this diet is. So my basic philosophy, as to why this this blood type diet is effective, it comes down to these blood type proteins, these blood type markers. So conventionally, medical doctors look at those blood type markers as little proteins on your blood cells that differentiate your blood from foreign blood. So if you were to get a blood transfusion of the wrong blood, your immune system would see those foreign blood type markers as foreign invaders and attack them just like with a virus or bacteria. And of course, that can be dangerous. Well, our immune system in the digestive tract works essentially the same way. And so what this means is we can eat certain foods that have proteins on them called lectins that actually look like the other blood types. So when you eat those foods, your immune system, which is just looking for foreign invaders, will misidentify those foods as foreign, causing immune reactions there in the digestive tract, which then can work into problems elsewhere in the body. So I find that this is just a basic, it's a nice basic genetic marker to understand foods your body's likely to do really well with, and other foods that your body, is sort of, programmed to not do so well with. So when we look at that, that actual link between your blood type and the foods you eat, it really comes down to your immune system. And so with that, by making these changes, I find for a lot of patients that digestion, of course, is a huge thing that can improve people that have different types of digestive issues. It's amazing how much improvement we can get by just making these diet changes. But other areas like allergy issues, like sinus allergies, we can see a lot of improvement. Even allergy-related migraines can go along with that sometimes too. We can also see joint inflammation. For some people, see some great improvements in joint inflammation and pain. Definitely energy, like we talked about for me, that was one of the main things I did, that I needed from the diet. And, energy is something that we see a lot of benefits from, clearer thinking, less brain fog, all those kind of good things. A lot of times people, can see better sleep, find better sleep and things. And I'm not trying to tell you that this is an end-all be-all. A lot of some people's health issues, this, diet may not be the main cause, but usually diet is at least part of the cause. And for some people, it can be everything, it can be everything, that's causing their health problems. And just by making a few different diet changes, it can mean the world to them. I talked about migraines. I've had multiple patients over the years that, a lot of times like younger women that are, in their 20s and 30s and have really chronic migraines. One, in fact, she was so, her migraines are so, daily migraines were so bad that her, 3 and 5-year-old children were taking care of her as she laid down on the couch all day long. And by making some of these diet changes for her blood type and getting rid of wheat and dairy products for her being a blood type O, within a month those migraines went totally away, as long as she stayed away from the wheat and the dairy products. So like I said, we can see some of these really amazing, things. That's not everybody, but definitely when people work on the diet, we tend to see some really good improvements in your health. And then you put that along with, coming to see, a naturopathic doctor like myself and working on maybe some different supplements to help your body to heal quicker. We can pull that together between the two and have a lot of great effects. So that's sort of, a little bit of a basic explanation of this diet. I do want to encourage people, if you have any questions throughout this, make sure to, yell it out, raise your hand or whatever, so that we can answer your questions. I definitely like to make this interactive whenever we can, so that, you can sort of tailor this to, to fit what, you're trying to get out of it. So from here, I want to talk about some of the basics for the foods for these different blood types. And so, the most common blood type is actually blood type O here in the United States. And, between O positive and O negative, which that RH factor, the positive negative, doesn't necessarily make any difference in diet. It's just that first, the O, the A, the B, or AB marker. And so the blood type O is about 45% of the population here in the United States. And if you want to sort of characterize the blood type O diet in, in other terms, you might think of the type O as more, type O diet is more of like a paleo diet or a caveman diet, where they do really well with lots of, animal proteins and lots of vegetables and, and things, but they really have a lot of trouble with grains and dairy products. That's really the biggest area where type O's tend to have a lot of trouble. And with that, there's some variants. There's certain foods, like say for instance with dairy products. Type O's often can tolerate, certain varied things, like regular butter, farmer's cheese, feta cheese, goat cheese, mozzarella, sheep's milk Romano. Those, as far as some of those cheeses, the cultures that are used to break down the milk and make it into those cheeses is what helps to break down some of the proteins your body could be having allergy reactions to and help you to tolerate it a lot better. As far as the grains go, wheat and corn are really the two main grains that type O's tend to have trouble with. And so when you're looking at that, you want to look at, we can, substitute with other grains. Yeah, wheat and corn are, a huge part of the typical American diet, but we have a lot of other things that we can do here. And that's where we're going to, talk a little bit later and have the main focus of this is, how we can make those substitutions and work within, our normal diet. So we're not making huge life-changing, huge sort of unbearable changes, but making just some substitutions for some, from some of the foods we like to some other foods that, we could learn to like, and, not make, huge drastic changes in our diet, but make, some meaningful changes that can help us to be healthier. So the next most common blood type is blood type A. And type A's are about 40% of the population. So between O and A, you're looking at most everybody, about 85% of the population. And type A's are quite a bit different than the blood type O. Where type O's do really great with red meats, and can really thrive with a diet, with red meats. Type A's tend to have a lot more trouble digesting those red meats. They can do okay with chicken and turkey and be fine, and lots of different fish, but they do tend to have a lot more trouble digesting the red meats, and it's something that tends to really cause constipation and sluggish digestion. Can cause a lot of immune problems for type A's also. And then pork's really just a meat that really all the blood types have a little bit of trouble with to some degree. Aside from the meats for type A's do a bit better with the grains than the type O's. They tolerate corn especially a lot better. Type A's still can have some issues with wheat, especially type A's that tend to have any weight issues or allergy issues. You really want to stay away from whole wheat. But in general, type A's will tolerate the grains a bit better. So with the type A's, really I would say the meats, the red meats and the dairy are probably the two of the biggest things the type A's have trouble with. And I don't really have time to go over everything with the diet here today. You can, for people that aren't really exposed to the diet before, there's lots of books you can get in the library or the bookstores or things. Eat Right for Your Blood Type is one of the main books. But you can find a lot of different books based on your blood type. And then the next most common blood type, which is fairly rare, blood type B, which, like I said, I'm a type B. Type B's are only actually about 11% of the population. So fairly rare. About 1 out of every 10 people you see on the street might be a blood type B. And type B's have, are a little bit different than the type O's and the type A's. Type B's, do a lot better with the red meats than the type A's. But type B's, like I had mentioned earlier for myself, type B's tend to have a lot of trouble with chicken. And so, of course, you think of chicken as being, one of the healthiest meats you can eat. And that is the case for most people. Like I said, the blood type O and the blood type A, which is 85% of the population, both do very well with chicken. So, of course, across the board, you're going to typically think of chicken as being, good food. But for the two less common blood types, type B and AB, chicken tends to be a big problem for our immune systems. But like I said, for the type B's, we can do the red meats. We can also do turkey is real good for type B's. So it's not all poultry the type B's have to stay away from. But type B's do get some benefits to, too. We actually do a lot better with a lot of the dairy products. So so all the blood type diets, we have some gives and takes, some things that maybe other people are jealous that you can have that they really shouldn't. Things you can really miss. But in general, there's a lot of good things available for all the blood types. And then with the AB, the very rare one, only about 4% of the population. Sort of a mix between what the blood type B's and the blood type A's have trouble with. The type ABs have a lot more trouble digesting the meats, especially chicken. Like I said, the type ABs can have a lot of trouble with the red meats too, like the type A's do. Type ABs also tend to have a lot of trouble with corn. And also peppers can be another one that really flares up the joints for the type ABs, I find. So that's sort of some of the basics for the different diets. So now, like I said, I wanted to sort of, this seminar, I wanted to really focus a lot more on, how do we make those adjustments in the diet for people. It's not, we don't want to focus on what we can't have. We want to focus on, foods we really can have and finding good, good things that we can switch out. So that's where our handouts are going to actually start. So, like for instance, wheat. To some degree or another, most people, most of the blood types will have a bit of trouble with wheat. The ones that probably do the best with wheat is the type AB. And of course, wheat is, very abundant in our diets. All of our regular breads, all of our regular pastas, pizza crusts, bagels, a lot of our cereals, you name it, there's, crackers, there's lots of wheat in a lot of these products. But there are some really good substitutes for wheat. And with that, I do want to stress before I go any further, there is a difference between somebody being wheat-free and somebody being gluten-free. Because gluten is in wheat, although it's in a few other grains. And so if somebody has to say wheat-free, they might not necessarily have to be gluten-free. Although if somebody has to be gluten-free, they have to stay away from the wheat. Other grains that would have gluten in them are things like rye, spelt, barley, and then a couple of really rare ones called kamut and triticale. So those are different grains that tend to have gluten in. And gluten is just a specific protein that really attacks the small intestine and really damages the small intestine. And for somebody that say has a really severe gluten sensitivity, we would call it celiac disease. It can be devastating as far as the effects that gluten has on their body, causing tremendous digestive issues, including bloody diarrhea. It can cause all kinds of different joint pains and aches, and it can really just cause problems across the board. Although we're finding more and more that a lot of people here in the United States do have some sort of gluten sensitivity. And we're not really worried about talking about that today. We're going to focus on this basic blood type diet, but I just wanted to make a little bit of that distinction when I'm talking about, wheat alternatives. I'm not also talking about necessarily gluten, free alternatives. Because the first one on my list here is spelt, which is a good substitute for wheat. It's actually a grain very similar to wheat though, and it does have gluten in it, but the gluten that spelt has is a lot less than wheat, and also is a lot more fragile form of gluten that can be broken down with people a lot better. So it's something that is a good alternative for a lot of people for wheat because it is a fairly versatile grain. And in the different health food stores, you can find spelt bread, spelt pasta. You can get the flour and bake recipes with it. Bread recipes are definitely a lot harder to do at home. There's a couple of specialty bakeries that do a good job of it, but at home it's a lot more difficult, especially if you're going to make bread that you want to eat sandwiches on. We actually get spelt bread here baked by Great Harvest Bakery on Market Street, and they do a really good job of it. We actually have some available here today. We get it fresh every Tuesday. This week, for some reason, we have a lot of extra. We're usually within a couple hours it's gone on that Tuesday. But if it's something, do you ever want to try, I do like people to give us a call and let us know, and we'll save a loaf for you. But yeah, so there's a lot of other, I mentioned the breads and pastas and, flour and stuff. And, with baking with spelt flour. Breads are, a little bit more difficult, but really most everything else cooking with spelt is pretty easy. You can use your regular cookie recipes and cake recipes. You can bake your quick breads and, a lot of these different things that you would, you can just substitute spelt for wheat and it'll turn out fairly good. Except that, because spelt does have a lot less gluten and the gluten's broken down a lot easier, you do have to be a little more careful when you're baking with spelt. And the big problem is if with wheat, when you're baking with wheat, you want to beat out all those lumps and bumps and make it as smooth as possible. Where with spelt, if you do that, it'll break down all the gluten and it'll be just a big dense pile of a hard dense pile of food. It won't really work as well. So what I usually recommend for people is that you mix all of your wet ingredients together, mix all your dry ingredients together, and then just sort of knead them together so that all the dry ingredients get moist. And you really don't have to worry about the lumps and bumps. It usually turns out really good by doing it that way. Also, when you're cooking with spelt, especially like cookies and stuff, you want to cut the butter in half. Because if you're making cookies, spelt, chocolate chip cookies or something, when you put them on the cookie sheet, if you have too much butter, they'll just all really spread out really flat. But if you cut the butter in half, it usually turns out pretty good. And so I have a lot of other things listed on here that you can find in Spelt and some of the different health food stores and stuff. That would be a good substitute for wheat products. The next one I wanted to talk about is Ezekiel products. Now, Ezekiel bread is actually a recipe out of the Bible, and what it is it's a sprouted grain bread. So it's a multi-grain bread, and wheat is actually the first ingredient. Well, I'm just telling you this is an alternative to wheat, but that sprouting process to make the Ezekiel bread is actually really important. So the different grains that they use for Ezekiel bread, they actually let these grains soak in water and start to sprout a plant. And that sprouting process is real important because it breaks down some of the proteins in the wheat, like the wheat bran and the wheat germ, that people tend to have a lot more allergy reactions to. So I always find it really interesting when I look through the diet and you look through the Bible and look at some of the things that people were told to stay away from, or like this a special recipe on how to make breads, and here thousands of years ago they're way ahead of what most of us realize right now. And so with the Ezekiel breads, you can get breads, you can get some good English muffins. Sometimes you can find some hamburger and hot dog buns and stuff. They tend to be really big though, and it's it's a meal in itself, much less having a burger or hot dog or something on the buns. But the English muffins are really good, and the bread can be pretty good too. The bread you usually can find Ezekiel bread at Giant Eagle. You might be able to find it at some of the other grocery stores, but it doesn't have any of the preservatives in it, like your regular bread that sits on the shelf for 6 or 8 weeks or more at a time without going bad. And so you're going to find it in the freezer section. It'll usually be somewhere near the bagels and the waffles is usually where you'll find it. You usually can find the breads there, especially at Giant Eagle. You might be able to find it at Mark's or some other grocery stores too. And sometimes you might be able to find the English muffins or some other things that might, with maybe out of the Ezekiel flowers too. And some other options that I have written down here, and I really need to read this handout over better before I just tell Beth to make copies again, because I missed a couple of things that I want to include. But rice is another. We do have some rice options that are really good. Especially pasta. If you can't have regular pasta, rice pasta is a great option, and that can be found in most of the grocery stores. There's one brand in particular that's really good for the rice pasta, and it's called Tinkyada. It's a weird name, but somehow they did it really. They do that pasta really good. Where most rice pastas will cook up real gummy and chewy, where the Tinkyada it's a lot more forgiving when you're cooking it, and it turns out really pretty good. You won't even mind not having the wheat pasta. Tinkyada. So I have no idea if that's Japanese or who knows. But you can also find some different rice crackers or different things that are good substitutes for wheat. Buckwheat, for blood type O's and A's, could be a good substitute. You can make your buckwheat pancakes or something, and that could be a good alternative to wheat.
Isn't there wheat in it though?
No, buckwheat is a different grain.
Oh.
Yeah, it's actually a gluten-free grain. I really don't know the history and why it's called buckwheat or anything with it, but it is a different grain. So for the type O's and the type A's, they tend to tolerate it pretty well. Now also when you're looking at, say, cold cereals, most of your cold cereals are going to have wheat and corn in them. So if you have to stay away from those, you have to watch out. There's only a couple of cold cereals that don't have wheat and corn in them. Regular rice, plain rice Chex is just going to be the rice. You can find some granolas that don't have wheat or corn, but it's usually more of the natural brands. the more of the conventional brands, you're going to still see wheat and corn in them. Cheerios, you think of it being oats, although your regular Cheerios brand does have wheat and corn as fillers. And really the only place that I found that does, that has a Cheerio type, cereal that doesn't have wheat or corn. Giant Eagle has their organic toasted oats, and that's something that doesn't, that's just the oats. It doesn't have the wheat or the corn. And then Rice Krispies too. You can find some, of course, some different puffed rice. Now the regular Rice Krispies, I believe it has corn syrup in it, where the whole grain Rice Krispies is sweetened with sugar instead of the corn syrup. All of that's always subject to change with those different manufacturers, depending on whether corn or corn syrup or sugar is cheaper at the time. But that gives you just some ideas on some things for wheat. It's just it's just a big thing for a lot of people to get wheat out of their diet. Then we talk about dairy products. Like I said, the type O's and the type A's really tend to have a lot of trouble with dairy. But all of the blood types can handle farmer's cheese, feta cheese, goat cheese, mozzarella cheese, and sheep's milk Romano. Now for the type A's, they do have a couple of other options. Type A's will also do well with yogurt and ricotta cheese. Although type O's do well with butter, where the type A's don't do well with it. And so when you talk about butter substitutes, you have to be careful. Most of your margarines out there still have butter in, will still have milk in them, dairy in them. There's one brand in particular that I really like. It's called Earth Balance, and we have one variety out here that's called Soy Garden that's really good. You really can't tell the taste, difference between that and regular butter. In fact, a while back, my wife and I would always have toast as part of our breakfast. And she's a type A that can't have the butter, and I'm type B that can't have soy. And so, we make our toast in the morning, and we have to keep them separate, because if we didn't, we get them, if we got them confused, we couldn't tell the difference, between tasting one or the other, which one had the regular butter and which one had the Soy Garden on it. The only problem is that my wife is really sensitive to the dairy, so she'd start sneezing afterwards. So then we would know that she ate the wrong one. But there's other types of that Soy Garden, the Earth Balance butter substitute in really all the Giant Eagles. Mark's does a good job with all of these things too, and some of the other grocery stores might have some of these different things. You just sort of have to look around. Someday it'd be great to be able to sort of make a list of what all the different stores have locally, but that would take so much work because of not just compiling the initial list, but trying to keep up with all the changes that they make at the grocery store. Never fails, it seems like, when you find something you really like, you buy the last of it and you can never find it again. And so that's why we try to keep some of these things that that my family really likes and some other people really like. Some of the more hard to find things we try to keep here. We don't have room for a lot of different grocery items, but we try to keep a couple of things that are really good for people. But soy can be a good substitute for dairy. Of course, you can get soy milks. You can actually get soy coffee creamers. Soy ice cream, soy cream cheese, soy yogurts. Now, there's a lot of controversy with soy these days. You hear a lot of people, really concerned about, especially about women having too much soy and causing breast cancer and stuff. Well, I can tell you that that's really something not to worry about. Any of the actual true research on soy and breast cancer has shown that soy actually reduces a woman's risk for breast cancer. And so just because soy has estrogens, they deduce that because it has soy estrogens, well, it must help to spur on estrogen-sensitive breast cancer, but that's just not the case. Soy estrogens are actually very weak estrogens, and they don't have quite the same effect as a regular estrogen. To the point where in Japan, where they do a lot more soy in their diets, They've done research on women that have estrogen-sensitive breast cancers, and had a group that would do your typical tamoxifen, estrogen-blocking, drugs, and a group of women that would do, the tamoxifen along with eating soy. And they found, all the studies that they've done, they found that the women that do the estrogen-blocking drug plus the soy actually had better outcomes. So that's where, people that, a lot of doctors will say stay away from the soy because of the soy estrogens, but it just really, in this research, it really just doesn't pan out to be an issue. Now, I can tell you that when you are getting soy products, you really do want to get organic soy, because most soy that's not organic is going to be genetically modified. And genetically modified soy does tend to be a lot more allergenic. People tend to have a lot more allergy issues to genetically modified soy. But typically people tolerate the organic soy that's not genetically modified pretty well. You also can find almond milk and rice milk at the grocery store, sometimes even almond or rice milk ice creams or yogurts. Those are a lot harder to find. You have a lot better likelihood of finding them at like a Whole Foods or the Mustard Seeds, or one of those big organic groceries that we don't have around here at all. You have to drive to Cleveland or Akron or Pittsburgh. But they are, those kind of products are available. Potatoes is another one that, especially the two main blood types, the type O and the type A, don't do very well with. Although the type O's do pretty well with sweet potatoes. They're actually really beneficial for type O's. So type A's are the only ones that really shouldn't have a lot of the sweet potatoes. But if you have your type A and you're really missing, say, mashed potatoes, you could try doing a mashed cauliflower. And they actually, you can find some restaurants that actually serve mashed cauliflower, although it's usually doused in regular butter, which makes it not that good for those type A's. But if you make it at home, all you have to do is boil up the cauliflower, mash it up real good, or throw it in the blender, and then add some of that soy butter and maybe some garlic or other seasonings, and you'll find that you like it just as well as the regular mashed potatoes. Turnips is another one that I don't have on the list that can be really good. My wife will sometimes chop up turnips, and because it's another root vegetable similar to potato. You can chop it up and pan fry it, sort of like scalloped potatoes or things. You can do different things with the turnips. Squash is a good potato substitute for all the different blood types. Pumpkin is another one that's really good for most everybody except for blood type B's. And this last one on the potato list is zucchini. You wouldn't think of it anything like potatoes, and it really isn't. Although my mother found out a couple of years ago when their garden was just full of zucchini and they were trying to do everything they could to get rid of all the zucchini, that she managed to cut up the raw zucchini in little nice chunks about the size that you cut up potatoes for a potato salad, and she mixed all the the mayonnaise and stuff that you would normally do for the potatoes, cold potato salad, and actually you really couldn't tell much of a difference. It had a pretty similar texture, and was a fairly mild taste. So the sauce really took over, and it actually turned out to be a pretty good potato salad. I'm going to back up though to wheat because, like I said, I haven't updated this sheet in a while, and I really have a couple of other things that I find that we carry here that are we really have some really good wheat substitutes. We actually have just recently got in an oat bran bread. Now usually oat breads in the grocery store, the first ingredient is going to be wheat, but we actually have one here that is just oat bran and oats. And it's a wonderful, really nice, versatile, basic bread. Also, we have a couple of different breads made out of a grain called millet, which we have a millet with flax seeds and rice. It's a nice, basic bread. Another one that's mostly just the millet, but it actually adds zucchini and a couple of other vegetables, more just to help, give it some, gives it, help it to stick together and give it, some more texture. And they, those breads you really can't find them anywhere but here, the bakeries in Florida. But, we really, that's all we eat at my house, and we have a lot of patients who just love those breads. And they make just a good, especially like that oat bran bread, I could care less if I have a regular bread ever again, because it's just wonderful. Next thing on my list to talk about is tomatoes. So, type O's and type ABs actually do fine with tomatoes. Other than both the type O's and type ABs do have some trouble with corn and high fructose corn syrup, which you have to watch out for in a lot of those tomato products. Your pasta sauces and ketchups, a lot of the cheaper ones will be sweetened with the high fructose corn syrup, where you usually can find a lot of varieties now that are sweetened with regular sugar instead of the corn syrup, and they're much better. But the blood type B's and ABs, the blood type B's and A's tend to have a lot more trouble with the tomatoes and can cause a lot more digestive issues, and sometimes some joint inflammation and pain. And so we actually have a couple of, on the back side of this sheet, we actually have a couple of recipes for tomato substitutes. So the first is a no tomato sauce, which instead of using a base of tomatoes, it uses a base of steamed carrots and beets, and then just mixing all the other seasonings with it. And it can be a really nice, basic pasta sauce and stuff. It's not going to be exactly like tomato sauce, but actually, if you do it right, it can taste really good. And then we have another real thin, pizza sauce substitute. If you want to, has all just basically just seasonings. You mix them with a little bit of water. We actually have in a bottle, same very similar recipe bottled here at the office. So you don't have to mix all the different things together.
By adding the anise, does that give it an anise flavor?
No, it's just a little small amount of anise, and you really don't notice it, the anise at all. Yeah, it's not going to make you taste like, Cell or black licorice or something. No, yeah, that actually surprised me too when I first saw it. You really don't notice that anise flavoring at all, because you're only doing 3 drops, so it's really mild. And the next thing on my list is meats. So, like, some of the different blood types have some issues with some of the meats. For instance, blood type A's especially tend to have a lot of trouble with beef. Now you can do ground turkey. That's a lot easier. That's pretty easy to find now. Although, there is a trick with ground turkey. Whenever you're, getting meats, we're all programmed to going with the leanest cut of meat. When you look at the grocery store. And for turkey is very lean to begin with. So when you go, for the leanest, ground turkey, it's like 90% lean. And when you cook up turkey burgers or turkey meatballs, it's just going to be, dense, dry, bland turkey breast.
Basically.
But, you can find different, ground turkey preparations that have, that actually have a little more of the dark meat turkey in. Usually, 90 to 94% lean. So it has a little bit extra fat plus some of the dark meat turkey. And really just that extra little bit of fat in the dark meat turkey makes all the difference as far as the taste with turkey burgers and meatballs and different things. My family tends to do a lot of turkey because my wife is the type A that can't have the red meats, and I'm a type B that can't have chicken. So we tend to, settle together and have a lot of turkey. And to be honest, I don't pay attention. I have to admit, I don't really pay that much attention when I'm eating stuff. She'll put a burger on the plate, and I'll just eat it. And once in a while, I'll think, wait a minute, was that a beef burger or was it a turkey burger? And I really didn't care because, I was hungry and it tasted good, and so it didn't matter. Another interesting, a couple of other interesting beef substitutes, ostrich, which, you can't find a lot of ostrich around here, but actually, even though it's a bird, it actually is a red meat. It actually tastes very similar to like beef or buffalo. I was actually exposed to ostrich the first time when I was in medical school. There's, you know, I was in, my school was in Arizona, and one of the small towns, you know, near there, had an ostrich festival every year. And, you know, I was sort of interested because they had, you know, it had a little stadium, and they were doing ostrich races, you know, different types of ostrich races, whether it's bareback or, you know, doing like a medieval, you know, like an old Roman where they were in the chariot, you know, being pulled by the ostrich and stuff. And but then when you finish, you know, when the show's over and you walk right outside, they have a, you know, a little stand with ostrich burgers. And yeah, I remember the first time I had one, it's like I really couldn't tell the difference between that and beef. You can find ostrich sometimes in like the mustard seed or the Whole Foods or stuff. Not really going to be find much of anywhere locally. Some of the health food stores might carry it. But just something to think about if for some reason you're a type A that really tends to have a bit of trouble with the red meats, and you want to, you know, something that tastes like a red meat. Also, ground lamb for the type ABs, even though they don't do well with beef, they actually do real well with lamb. And so you can get ground lamb at like the Tulos and stuff that tastes pretty good. You might be able to get ostrich at Tulos or someplace like that too, or especially if you ask them. And then, you know, for a type A or a type O, you know, you can get ground chicken too and make, you know, burgers and things like that. You know, if you're a type B or AB that has trouble with chicken, you know, you can get turkey, you know, breast cutlets and cook them up very similar to chicken and really won't notice too much of a difference. Really all blood types should stay away from pork, and so you can find different turkey bacons and turkey ham and turkey sausages. You have to watch out because a lot of them will still have, you know, the turkey products will still have a lot of the, you know, the bad preservatives and sulfites that aren't really that good for you. But you can find a lot of, you know, natural ones that don't have all those preservatives in them if you really look. And then beans would be the next one I wanted to talk about. So like for instance, a lot of people, you know, do kidney beans. You know, if you're going to do a chili or different things, you can use the white kidney beans, the cannellini beans, and that makes a nice alternative. A lot of times lately, it's, you know, it's more popular to do like a black bean chili, and you could do that too for the type O's and the type A's. A lot of people now like hummus, and the garbanzo beans are really only good for the blood type O's. Although if you're making your own hummus, you could do it with cannellini beans, and it'll taste really good. And sometimes in some of the Middle Eastern groceries, you can actually find that. I actually have somebody that told me that they found an edamame, which is a soy hummus, that they've actually found a giant eagle, like one in like Niles or Warren or somewhere. Although you might be able to find it in some of the other ones, but yeah, so it was made with, you know, soy instead of the garbanzo beans, and they said it was really good.
So beans, period? There's so many of them you don't even have listed here.
Right.
So
I'm talking about some of the growth.
Yeah.
those are okay, the ones that you don't have on here.
Well, like I said, you know, in general, I'm talking about some of the main basic things. I mean, I would really, you know, if you want to start the diet, let's definitely follow some of these basic things we're talking about. But
No, that's not my question.
What?
My question is, you have, instead of kidney beans, you can use cannellini.
Yeah.
But what about other types of beans? They're off limits, period?
No, it depends on the blood type.
Okay.
Like say for instance, like I said, the cannellini bean is good for all the blood types. The Great Northern bean is good for all the blood types. Pinto beans, the type A's and the type ABs do pretty well with, where type O's and B's don't do well with. Navy beans are good for the type A's and the ABs and the B's. So, you know, lima beans are good for everybody except for the blood type A. So, you know, there's some differences in those different, you know, beans. It's just for me to, you know, to print out and have a copy of the full diet for everybody for a free seminar, it just really isn't feasible.
Oh, I understand. It's
Yeah.
just that you only had 2 types here, and I'm thinking.
Right, I know,
more
yeah.
than that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of other differences, and that's where, you know, getting one of the books that actually has the whole diet listed out is really good and helpful. And then, you know, for the blood type O's and the type B's, we tend to have a lot, can have a lot of trouble with peanuts. And you can find in all the grocery stores now almond butter, which makes a great substitute. Any questions right now that anyone has? Yeah.
So when you said you ate a certain food that made you sluggish,
Yeah.
was that because your body had to work harder to digest it, or because it caused an inflammation?
It's because it caused an allergy reaction, yeah. Yeah, so I really didn't, today didn't really explain that real well. What I find is for this diet, I don't look at it, these 4 different blood type diets as the end all be all. There is no, diet that everybody's gonna fit 100% into. But I find it's a nice framework for understanding the foods you're most likely to have problems with. And so what I encourage people to do is, when you look over these diets, and especially some of the, the main foods I said to stay away from for those blood types, if you get rid of that food group, like say for instance the wheat, you get rid of wheat for about a month or so. If it's a food you're really sensitive to, when you try to add that wheat back in after about a month, you tend to have, some allergy reactions from it, and you can have a lot of different symptoms, depending on what, some of your body's different triggers are. It could cause some sinus congestion and sneezing, or like for me, when, with the wheat, it causes some really, sudden fatigue. It can cause different joint inflammations or digestive problems, or, whatever some of your typical body's, issues are. That's usually where some of these foods will hit. So I just encourage that when you're working through these diets, that you really, when you're looking at a food group, that you're real strict about it for about a month or so, and then try to reintroduce it. And when you reintroduce it, try to do it pretty big, so you make sure you can tell whether you're having a reaction to it or not. Because to cut back on some of these foods, you may cut way back and cut out 75 or 80% of what you normally eat, but that might not be enough to get you over the hump and stop some of the symptoms that it's causing. So then you're just depriving yourself, and you're not really getting the benefits from the diet.
Are there any cookbooks?
Yes. We actually have cookbooks that were actually done, made last fall by the main doctor that did a lot of the books, Dr. Peter Diadamo. And we actually have cookbooks for each of the blood types here at the office. I think they're $18. Nice, full color, lots of nice, helpful recipes. You can also go to Dr. Diadamo's website, which is diadamo.com, DADAMO.com. And you can actually find, if you look through the website, you can actually find the full diets for all the different blood types. But also there's a nice recipe section where you can sort by your blood type and find, foods, recipes that are, good for you, and that's all free of charge too.
You shut down my best breakfast.
What's that?
Shut down the best breakfast.
A tomato, bacon, with lettuce, mayonnaise, and white bread. All I gotta do is eat the lettuce, right?
That's it. There went.
Yeah.
What about fruits?
Okay. So a lot of the fruits, most of the blood types do pretty well with. For the type O's, the ones I usually caution the most are oranges and a couple of the melons, like the honeydew and the cantaloupe.
Oh, really?
Yeah. For the type. But for as far as the oranges though, it's not all citrus. I mean, oranges and tangerines, where grapefruits, lemons, and limes are okay for the type O's. And the same goes for the type A's. They tend to have a lot of trouble with oranges, but the grapefruits, the lemons, and limes are fine. Type A's also can have a lot of trouble with bananas. And like I said, with all these foods, it's something that especially something you suspect. You want to get rid of it for a good month, and then have a couple in a day and see what happens. But that's where you have full control over what's really going on in the diet, and really can see what's happening in your body. I just use this blood type diet as a nice starting block, so that you're not doing everything from scratch, which if you do a full elimination diet and try to add everything back in little by little could take you a couple of years to figure out the foods you're most likely to have problems with. All right. Any other questions right now?
What fruit is good for B?
Type Bs, really most all of your normal fruits are good for the type Bs. The only ones that type Bs will have some trouble with are some of the more, more exotic ones. So avocados, coconut, pomegranate, persimmon, prickly pear.
Okay, you're eating this.
So, most of the ones that you don't definitely have to worry about. And so I actually included some other recipes in here, some of our tried and true favorites, like this brownie recipe is a great one. A lot of people just absolutely love it when my wife will make those brownies. And it's made out of spelt flour instead of wheat. We have a gluten-free, or you can make spelt the strawberry lemonade muffins, which takes a lot of work because it's using lemon zest and and finely chopped strawberries. But my wife, when she made it, she was complaining about all the work, and then when she got to actually try one of the muffins, she's like, it was worth every bit of time. And so that recipe, we actually have a couple of different types of flour things. So you could use the spelt, although if you want to do gluten-free, you can mix like half rice flour with half gluten-free oat flour or half almond flour. This is some different options you can do there. So we have some of that listed. And part of the reason why I have some of these recipes, of course, it's not going to give you everything in life, but it gives you some ideas on how to make some substitutes. Basically all of these recipes are things that we just converted, making some substitutions. So, any recipes that call for milk in it, to give it a little bit of, thickness. My wife will just use a plain almond milk, not the vanilla or chocolate flavored. Of course, depends on what you're using it for, but usually that can, that'll work pretty well in a lot of recipes. Have this spinach quiche recipe. That's one my wife makes a lot. She just made some changes from the Better Homes and Gardens cookbook, and to do it. And she actually for this quiche, she actually typically doesn't use any crust either. Just makes it in the Pyrex pan without a crust. But just using instead of regular bacon, uses the turkey bacon. You can look at some of these different options in there, and things. A nice little basic, pasta bake that she'll make is just a casserole type recipe, with just, a rice or a spelt pasta, cooking up some ground turkey or ground beef or some, turkey Italian sausages or things, and she'll put in some vegetables and maybe, some mozzarella or different things and sort of bake it up as a casserole. It can turn out as a nice sort of complete, real easy meal. And then she has a couple of other, things that over the years have worked really well, like a turkey lasagna, a wedding soup, spelt oatmeal raisin cookies, and a white chili too. So just giving people some options. Like I said, that's what really the point of this seminar is to be able to show you that you can get rid of some of these foods and still eat really good, and just make some substitutions so you don't really miss those other foods so much, and you especially don't miss them so much if you get rid of one of those foods and add it back in, and you start having some reactions to it and realize that's been causing some health problems for me, and I really don't want to look at that now. And that makes it real easy to stay away from some of those foods. So does anybody have any other questions? Yes.
So what are your thoughts on blood tests for food allergies?
I have some different thoughts. If somebody has a true overt food allergy, only about 4% of the population really has a true food allergy. So that's why when an allergist will do, either the skin prick testing or a food blood test, they're mostly only picking up environmental allergies. So it picks up the dusts and the danders and the cat and the dog and, different, molds and different things like that. because only about 4% of the population has a real food allergy. So that'd be somebody that is allergic to peanuts, and they eat some peanuts, and they have an asthma attack, or they develop hives, or some very serious immediate reactions. Where these food sensitivities, which I like to call them food sensitivities, not really food allergies, but like the blood type diet and stuff, they're reactions that aren't quite as immediate necessarily, but they last in the body a lot longer. Where like a regular allergy usually is over within a few hours or 24 hours, where some of these food sensitivities can last 2, 3, 4, even up to 5 days in your body having a reaction after you eat it. So if you're eating something once or twice a week, you're pretty much reacting to it 24/7, and you really can't tell the difference on one day when you eat something versus the next day. And so that's why I really encourage getting rid of it for about a month. That's what it usually takes for your immune system, the digestive tract, to have to actually see those changes. But to get back to your question about allergy testing, you do have some blood tests for food sensitivities. But what I found over the years with people doing those blood tests is they really are not that accurate. They tend to focus a lot more on foods that you've most recently ate. So it's if somebody has a compromised digestive tract, it'll tell them that the only thing they can eat is lettuce and cucumbers or something, and they're expected to eliminate everything else, or some of their main foods that they eat all the time, where you can develop those those sensitivities because of that compromised digestive tract. And what I find is that it works a lot better to start with this blood type diet and get rid of some of the main foods that you're most likely to be some of your core problems, and then your digestion can heal, and some of those other foods that you might be sensitive to, you'll actually see those sensitivities decrease. And so then later on, if you were to do some of that allergy testing, you wouldn't pick up nearly as many things. So that's where, it's, if you get a good food sensitivity test, you're going to be spending $600 or $800, and I just find that for the most part, it's really not worth it. That if we just make these blood type changes, and we can always, and sometimes we'll have to work on tweaking and, playing with a couple of other, foods that you might have to look at and get rid of. But usually it works a lot better than those actual, food tests, food allergy or sensitivity tests.
And just one more thought. It was weird because I'm A, and yesterday I ate tomato sauce and pasta, white pasta. Yesterday I felt real good. My knees didn't bother me. My ankles were. Today my knees are killing me. My ankles are killing me. Does it respond that quickly?
Yeah, it really can.
No, why
Especially
not?
if
I've always been like, why? One day I'm fine, and the next day I'm like,
yeah.
and then you go to the doctors and you tell them that, and they go, well, what?
And that's what can be so frustrating about this, because and sometimes it might not necessarily be just one food by itself. It might be a reaction. So you're having a couple of foods that you tend to have together in one food, or it just happens that certain days you're eating certain things that might be different triggers in different meals even, but they come together, and the next couple of days you suffer.